write your CCNA now, or should you wait for the blueprint that is coming in February of 2027? CCNA has made one of the biggest changes in the last 6 years. And in this video, I'm going to be focusing on what is the problem that Cisco is trying to fix, what has changed and what has been added in the new CCNA, and whether you should go and write your exam now or wait for 2027 when the new blueprint comes in live. Hey, my name is Tanay. If we're meeting for the first time, I help aspiring network engineers gain hands-on experience. So if you're new here, you might want to consider subscribing. So I'm sure many of you are wondering, what are the cups doing in front of me? I'm going to try and use this to illustrate the journey that CCNA has gone through, the problem that Cisco created, and what they've basically fixed at the moment. So before 2020, CCNA used to be 5 different certifications. There was routing and switch, there was wireless, there was voice, there was security, and there was data center. And all these were 5 individual certifications with 5 different exams. And 2020, Cisco decided to combine these into one certification. And as you can imagine, when you take 5 different certifications and you make them one, you have to compromise somewhere along the lines. So Cisco took a little bit of each of the certifications. So a bit of data center was added into the new CCNA, a bit of security, a bit of voice, a bit of wireless, and a bit of routing and switching. And then also automation and programmability were also coming in around about the time. So they were added into the certification. And it became the 2020 blueprint for CCNA. So what is it that they're trying to fix? At that time, the challenge was that if you walked into an organization as a network engineer, you would come across routing and switching, which many network engineers of old were very comfortable because that was Cisco's bread and butter. However, you would come across telephony, you would come across wireless access points, you would come across Nexus switches on the data center side, and you would come across firewalls, ASAs on the security side. And many engineers struggled. So Cisco decided, hey, let's come up with one certification and let's put a bit of everything in that one certification. So the CCNA of 2020, they taught you a bit of security, a bit of routing and switching, a bit of programmability and automation. There was a bit of wireless and a bit of telephony. So when you walked into an organization, you were kind of familiar with all these technologies. But as you can imagine, when you take 5 and you merge them into one, you're going to compromise on the depth that you can teach in each subject. So the 2020 up to the current CCNA graduates, they knew a lot about the different technologies, but they did not have enough depth to be able to troubleshoot, verify, and configure these technologies when they failed in production. When there's an outage at work, they're not interested on whether you know VLANs. They're interested in you being able to configure, troubleshoot, and fix the VLANs. So I'm excited that Cisco has decided to put all these aside, and now they've brought in the new CCNA 2027 blueprint. So what has been added to this new CCNA? So Cisco wanted to focus on 3 aspects. Number 1, configure, verify, and troubleshoot. So with the previous CCNA, there was a lot of emphasis on describe, list, and in some instances, configure. And this basically created CCNAs that were paper-based in the fact that, yes, they know the technology, but they haven't gone through the actual configuration of the technology inside the CCNA course. As it used to be around about 2012, the core focus was basically routing and switch, which is Cisco's bread and butter. But there was also a high emphasis in troubleshooting. When I did my CCNP, there was actually a full module that was dedicated just to troubleshooting so that you can know how to troubleshoot your network if it's broken. And Cisco have basically brought back the CCNA of old in this current CCNA, where their emphasis is you need to know how to configure, you need to know how to verify, and you need to know how to troubleshoot. So you need to know how to configure VLAN, and how do you verify that the VLAN is configured? And if the VLAN is broken, how do you troubleshoot? So what that means is that there is no more memorization of the exam, because the exam is now expecting you to know how to configure, and the exam is going to test you on configuration inside the exam. But I'll leave that to later in the video. So what has been added in the new CCNA? The first one is network infrastructure and connectivity, and that is 25%. You have copper, SFPs, IPv4, IPv6, and wireless. So I'll break this down. This is where you're going to look at IP addressing, subnetting, both on IPv4 and IPv6. And then on the copper side, I feel like they've brought in something that us as network engineers deal with on a day-to-day basis. SFPs, polarity of fiber, which were not existent in the previous CCNAs. And the next is switching. And this one has got 25%. And for the first time since the 2020 shift and change, Cisco has come back to what is known as the bread and butter of Cisco, which is routing and switching. And I'm excited because now they occupy 45% of the new CCNA syllabus. And switching, we're talking about 802.1q, the famous VLANs. We are talking about spanning tree. But once again, the difference between the old CCNA and the new one is the emphasis on configuring. So now you are expected to configure 802.1q trunks. You are expected to configure ether channels and be able to load balance traffic, and in some instances actually be able to fail over. So if you're used to doing brain dumps and just memorizing, this is not the CCNA for you. Yes, it is easier, but it is harder if you don't want to lab. And I am so excited about the new CCNA because now engineers can now get the necessary hands-on experience that the industry is looking for. I've sat in interviews where I've interviewed CCNA graduates, and you ask questions about VLANs and you get brilliant answers. But then when you ask someone the question of, have you ever implemented a VLAN in a production environment or in a lab environment, then you get silence. But with the new CCNA, you can't pass unless you lab it, you practice it, and you're able to verify and troubleshoot. All right, the third one is routing. Straightforward, right? Static routes, default routes. What's a static route? What's a default route? How do you configure them? How do you verify them? How do you show the routing table? And how do you interpret the routes that you see in the routing table? Because in the exam, you might get a screenshot of a routing table and then you're asked questions in relation to that. So you need to know, and that is 20%. And then two more, we have network services and security. This is network address translation, port address translation. These are basics. You got SFTP, and this is very important because now you are expected to know how to back up a Cisco device configuration to an SFTP server and how to be able to get that backup back from the SFTP server onto a new device so that you can restore the configuration on the switch. And all these things are things that we encounter in the field on a day-to-day basis. And that's also been added in the new CCNA. And then we can't do without AI. Oh, sorry, that was 20%. And we can't do without AI. So there's a module on AI, network ops, where you're looking at agentic AI, where you are using agents to be able to verify and create and look at what's happening on your network. We're also looking at your external controllers that are sitting in the cloud, controlling your FTDs on the firewall side. You've got your web CUCM, you've got Catalyst Center. So they're also looking at all those controllers. And then you've got the good old SNMP and syslog. So that's what has been added in the new CCNA. And yes, it might seem simple, but there's a whole lot of information, and I'm happy that Cisco has gone back to basics and it's giving you the necessary hands-on experience that you need to be able to succeed. It means more CLI, more labs, more real-world tasks, more performance-based questions that are going to ask you what you have configured. And if you've configured it, it's not an issue because you're comfortable with it. But if you've not configured it before, then it's going to be a challenge. So in the new CCNA, we see a return back to troubleshooting. Troubleshooting VLANs, instead of just explaining what a VLAN is, troubleshooting OSPF instead of explaining what OSPF is, troubleshooting access lists instead of just explaining what an access list is. So what does it mean for you as a student? CCNA has basically reduced from 6 domains to 5 domains. This is going to make studying much more easier. It's easy for you to now structure your learning because a lot of the fluff that was in CCNA has now been taken out. It's now easier for you to build labs because the expectation from the certification is for you to configure. So the textbook is going to walk you through the configuration process. They're going to walk you through the verification process, and they're going to walk you through the troubleshooting process. So you can take the textbook blueprint, put it in a home lab setup, and be able to configure and gain the necessary hands-on experience that the industry is basically looking for. CCNA is going to be simpler because it's more structured, but it's also going to be a bit harder because now it's no longer about memorization. It's more about understanding the technology, appreciating how the technology works, and being able to verify and fix if the technology is broken. So I'm sure you're wondering, so should you write your CCNA now, or should you wait for the blueprint that is coming in February of 2027? If you already started your journey and you've probably gone 50%, I probably would encourage you to go ahead and write the current CCNA. However, if you're starting your journey into CCNA now, I would say wait for the official Cisco guide to come out, purchase that guide and work on the new syllabus so that by the time you get to Feb, you have basically made strides and ground. And the reason why I'm saying that is that there is a lot in this new CCNA, a lot of good things in it, a lot of good foundations that are inside the new CCNA. And the way that it's been streamlined and the focus is going towards configuration, verification, and troubleshooting, it means that you're going to learn on the new blueprint. You're going to get the good things that are in the new blueprint, and that's going to help you with your hands-on experience. Because the number one challenge that most CCNA graduates that I've interacted with is not that they don't have knowledge about networking. It's not that they don't have knowledge about Cisco devices, but many of them have a challenge with hands-on experience. Most people have never labbed a Cisco network. Most people have never actually configured a Cisco network. And in this new CCNA, you are mandated to be able to build a lab so that when you come across the questions in the exam, you are able to answer them with confidence. So if you patiently wait for the new blueprint, you are guaranteed that you're going to get information from the new blueprint that's going to help you. So yes, finally, CCNA is back. If you got any questions, please let me know in the comments below and let me know what you think about the new blueprint. Do you think Cisco has gone in the right direction, or you think the current CCNA is much better? Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.